You are here with Tripedal Reviews. Today we are going to be making some presets on the Mercury X. We're going to start simple and work our way up to more complex presets. The first preset that we are going to do is just a standard plate reverb preset. This exact same concept applies to every kind of basic type of reverb preset. The way that you make it is the exact same, you just choose different reverb types. So we need to select the plate reverb type. We want to press C3 to get into the edit menu. And then we want to scroll to the reverb category and select the proper structure. In this case, it's going to be plate. And ultra plate is already selected. If you wanted to select it, you could use C2 to select or scroll through the different options. So we want to select ultra plate. Now from here, I can basically just control all the standard reverb controls with the front panel knobs. So I don't really need to be in the structure anymore. I can just exit back into the primary screen. We can control it through the knobs here. So if you want to control decay length, use the decay knob. Now there's two other controls here. One is controlling the low frequency and one is controlling the high frequency of the plate reverb. We'll get into how to set what these control later, but you can set these two controls to basically control anything you'd like. So we'll just play around to hear how this sounds. So once you have that the way you'd like it, you can press and hold C3 to enter the Save As menu. And then we can name it here. I'm going to name it TPR Plate. T P R. You can hit this 2 times when there's a letter there to get a space and scroll over. Then we want plate. And to make clear, pressing this is just skipping letter groups. So you press it once, for instance, to get to lowercase letters. You press it again to get to uppercase. Or you could just scroll all the way through them. That's just a shortcut to get to your different lettering. And this really doesn't take long at all once you get used to it. Okay, we got a TPR plate. Now you want to press and hold this again to save it. And there we go, that's our first preset. And like I said, this exact same concept applies to any type of basic reverb that you want to set up. All you do is select a structure, which is the type of reverb, and then you can control your main basic controls on the front. Save it, you're done. You have a basic plate, spring, hall, whatever. So the next preset that we're going to create is going to deal with pre-delay and tap tempo, but I'd like to get you familiar with the concept of pre-delay in the Mercury X. Typically on more advanced reverb pedals, you have a pre-delay control. What the pre-delay control does is sets the amount of time between the time you strike a note until the time the reverb rings out. The amount of time between those 2 points is known as the pre-delay. So if you have that set low, there's going to be no time difference between the time you play and the time the reverb sounds out. As we can hear there, it's immediate. If you start cranking this up, you can hear a delay between those 2 points. And the Meris allows you to crank up the pre-delay to ridiculous levels. So before I get into the tap tempo side of things, I'm just going to find something with the pre-delay that I like. Now the first thing that you notice, or one of the things you'll notice in here in the pre-delay section, is that there's actually a feedback control. This can very much be used as a diffused delay pedal, and feedback is how many repeats you're going to get. So instead of just one repeat, we can crank this up and get multiple. Now that I've got something I like with the pre-delay going, let's go ahead and set the modifier for tap tempo. So we'll go ahead and scroll to the modifier section. And we want to go to the hold modifier. And we want to find the hold assign. And we want to set this to tap. Now let's go back to our pre-delay section. And right now, this should, since we've set it to tap, that we've set the modifier to tap, we should be able to control the pre-delay with the tap tempo. Alright, now that we have something we like, we can go ahead and save that. We'll call it TPR. Pre. And there we go. We've created a patch that utilizes pre-delay along with tap tempo to set it. So what I'd like to do with this preset is take the ideas that we learned in the last preset with pre-delay and use that in a different context. So the first thing that I'd like to do here is get a good room reverb going. So we're going to go ahead and select the type. And I've selected 78 room. And let's just go ahead and hear that. Okay, so now we have a basic room reverb going. What I would like to do is do the same type of concept that we did on the last one, where we had pre-delay, and I want it tied to tap tempo, but I want to use it in a way where I can set the pre-delay time really, really short. And the reason I want to do that is because I want the room reverb, and then I want to be able to tap the tempo and get a slapback type delay setting with the pre-delay. So just to demonstrate with the pre-delay all the way down. Now up a little bit. So that's the type of thing I want to get out of the tap tempo so that I can just have a standard room reverb, and then when I want it, I can tap it in with the tempo. So let's go ahead and go over to the modifier section. Then we want to go to the hold assign, just like we did in the last patch. And we want to set this to tap. With that set to tap, we can go back to the pre-delay section. And in here, we want to go to the left and right subdivisions. Currently, it's off. We want to turn that on, and I want a pretty small tap division for this. So we're going to go probably 16ths. And let's give that a whirl. So that sounds good to me. Let's go ahead and save this. I'll call it TPR slap. And there we go. We've got a basic room reverb, and we can use tap tempo to basically get a slapback type delay effect. So one of the things that we can do with the Mercury X, since it is fairly modular, is any of the various types of effects that you can add to the reverb, for instance, chorus in the modulation section, or tremolo, or compression, or the various preamp types like tube or op amp. You can set those to different locations in the signal path, and one of those locations is pre plus dry, which pretty much means that you're putting the effect on your dry signal. So you can actually use this as a chorus pedal, or a trem pedal, or a compressor, etc. So in this preset, we'll show you how to do that. So let's go ahead and find the type of modulation that we want to turn this into. And let's say we want to do trem. So we want to scroll to the modulation section because that is where trem is. And then let's go ahead and select the type for tremolo. And let's hear what that sounds like. So we can hear there that the trem is applied to the reverb, but it is not applied to the dry signal. So we want to scroll here to location. Right now it's in post. Change this to pre plus dry, and then let's hear it again. Now you may not want to use that with the verb, so if you don't want verb on it, just take the mix all the way down. Now let's go to the speed. Let's slow that down a bit. Let's go to the wave shape. We can choose between either sine or square wave. There's not a whole lot of options there, but it is good for basic trem. And then you can control the depth of it with the mix. So if you want it shallower. And there you have it. You have a basic trem. The exact same concept applies if you wanted chorus. You would just select chorus instead of trem, turn the mix down. You're good to go. Again, with any of the various types of effects that you can add in here, you can always just run them standalone in that manner. So let's go ahead and save this. We'll call it TPR trem. And you're good to go. In this preset, we're going to use the same concept as the last preset, so we're going to be putting an effect on the dry signal, but then I would like to tie that to envelope control. So in this instance, we're going to tie vibrato to the dry signal, so we want to go to the modulate category, and then select the type as vibrato. And let's go ahead and hear that. Okay, we can hear there that we have no vibrato when the mix is all the way down, so we need to change the location to pre plus dry. There we go. Now we want to tie this to envelope control. So let's go ahead to modifiers, and we want to find envelope. And we can change the envelope assign. We want it to be in the mod section. And I'm going to tie the envelope to the modulation speed. The envelope shape can just be linear. Now let's go back over to the modulation section. And we'll crank the speed all the way up. Now I've turned the depth down here on it. What I'm kind of going for here is the envelope in the Mercury X is very interesting and kind of quirky. It acts the exact same way as the auto swell type pedals do that don't re-trigger if you don't palm mute notes. So there's not a whole lot of smooth characteristic in this envelope. It pretty much triggers until it's triggered again. There isn't like a, for instance, if you're doing trem and you tie it to speed, it's not a gradual speed increase and then decrease and then increase again when the signal goes louder a lot of times. It's triggered until it drops below a certain threshold and then you trigger it again. With that in mind, I can take that, what I would call a limitation, and I can turn it into something cool. So if I know it only triggers when a signal drops below a certain point, I can basically have it trigger once and then play after that and it won't trigger again. So you can kind of use that in this particular instance as kind of like a tape warble type effect. So I'm controlling where the warbles get put in this instance. Kind of sounds a little dry, so we can mix in the verb with it. Alright, I like that, so we'll go ahead and save that. And we'll just call it TPR Vibe. And there we go. We now have an envelope-controlled vibrato with some reverb mixed in there. So I showed you how to make this a trem pedal by using the trem in the modulation category and assigning it to the pre-dry location. And that's great, except for the only two wave shapes available are sine and square wave. But we can easily get around this with a little creative thinking. So one thing I know from working with the LVX is that one of the modifiers is an LFO. And the LFO that you have in the modifiers section allows you to select a lot more wave shapes than just sine and square. And all trem is modulating volume up and down. So if we can find a way to modulate the volume of this pedal with the LFO, then theoretically we can have access to more wave shapes than just sine and square wave. So we're going to want to browse to the preamp category, and then we want to select volume pedal. Now volume pedal in and of itself isn't all that useful without an expression pedal hooked in or something modulating that volume pedal. So we're going to use the LFO to modulate this volume pedal instead of actually using an expression pedal. But before we go to the modifier, let's go ahead and set the location to our drive signal. And now we can go over to the modifiers section. And under LFO-A assign, we want to set that to the preamp category and control the level. We can then take a look at shapes. For the shapes available with the LFO, we have triangle, sine, square wave, and then several options that do step up and step down. And we also have sawtooth and reverse sawtooth. Here we can control the LFO speed, so I'm going to crank that up a little. Let's go back to the shapes, and we'll choose sawtooth. Now, if we want to adjust the depth of the trem, we can do that just with the LFO minimum. And that's because you're setting the low point of the volume level. So instead of going completely to 0, it'll only go down to whatever level you've set it here. So that's it. That's an alternate way to set up trem on the pedal, so you have access to more wave shapes than just sine wave and square wave. So let's go ahead and save this. We'll just call it TPR Trem Alt. And there you go. So the next preset that we're going to do is something that I do quite often. It's not all that complicated, but it's basically to assign a low-pass filter to the dry signal so that I can then use this as a filter pedal. And you can do this with the envelope, which maybe we'll get into as well. So go ahead and browse to the filter category, and then we want to select ladder as the filter type. Now to begin with, there's nothing modulating this filter, so you're not going to hear anything. I mean, you hear it cutting off high end, but there's no modulation going on like we would expect. So we want to go to the modifiers section. and then set the LFO to control that. So we'll set the LFO, and we want to go to the filter category, and then set it to filter frequency. Now let's hear it. Now we can hear that, but it's not going as high as we would like it. And the reason for that is that you need to set the highest point of whatever parameter you're trying to control where you want the maximum to be. So on filter, if we go to frequency, it's only set like there, so it's going from the very minimum to that point. We want to set that all the way up. Now we should hear a wider sweep. Okay, let's take the resonance down a little bit. Alright, I would like that to be a little bit faster, so we're going to go back to the modifiers and set the speed, but we want to make sure we're on LFOA for the speed. Now, I don't want to go all the way to 0, so we're going to set the minimum a little higher. That sounds better. Now let's adjust the speed to be a little slower again. So I'm going to set that the slowest it'll go, play some distortion through this just so you can hear it. So let's go back to the filter section. And let's change the topology to something other than low pass and just hear it. So there you go. That's how you can tie LFO to filter. And you just save that if you want. Now let's try just tying the envelope. And I'm not sure how good this is going to work, but we'll try it anyway. So we want to take off the LFO assign. And then we want to go over to the envelope. And then we want to assign that to control the frequency. And let's hear what we have. So again, this envelope filter isn't the best because it's not real good at sensing the volume dip. It's just good at retriggering. So you kind of have to play to the pedal in that you have to mute notes in between playing them. It's doable, but kind of a pain in the butt. And you can make that less dramatic by adjusting the minimum and maximum on your envelope. Let's add in some reverb. So again, not perfect, but pretty good for passable. Now we'll go ahead and save that as TPR ENV. And you should be good to go. So in this preset, we are going to set the hold modifier to freeze the reverb trail so that we can then play over it. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is just find a reverb that we want to do this with. So we'll scroll to the reverb category. We've used Ultra Plate a lot in this, so we'll use something else. Okay, we're going to roll with that. Now we want to make our way over to the Dynamics category and select Freeze as the type. We want the location to be probably pre. And we want to turn freeze on. And let's just hear this. That sounds decent, but I'd actually like the reverb signal to be a little louder. So we're going to turn up the gain on this. So that's good, but I don't really feel like holding this. Currently it's set to momentary, which means that I have to hold down this to get the freeze and then let off it for it to go away. I'd rather just press it once and have it latch so we can actually change the hold behavior, and we do that in the modifier section. With the hold latch parameter. So right now it's set to momentary. We can set that to latching. Now let's try it. And that's all there is to it. Now you're able to do a freeze with the hold modifier. We'll go ahead and save this. We'll call it TPR freeze. So I like this preset, but I would like to change what these knobs do. You can easily do that if we go into the edit menu, find whatever you would like those knobs to control, and then just press and hold the knob that you would like to control that, and it will assign it to that. So now if I go back out to my main screen, I can now control the gain of the freeze with that knob. And you can do that with anything you would like to control with those knobs. This next preset that we're going to work on was a user request, and they wanted to hear a pitch down and lo-fi haze. So first thing that we're going to want to do is just find a reverb that will work with this. And I rather like that Hall, so we'll use that one. Now let's make our way over to pitch. And let's do the location as the pre on the dry signal, sorry. And let's make sure that the pitch is all the way down because we're going to do a lower pitch. And I want the mix fairly high here. And that should do it. Let's hear it. So adjust that mix a little bit. Okay, I like that. So let's now add in the haze. We want to go to the modulation category. Yeah, that sounds decent. So we'll go to modifiers. What I'd like to do is set the hold to latching, first of all. And then we want to assign it to control the mix on the Haze. So we want to go to the modulation category. And then choose the mix. And there you have it. You have a pitch down. We've applied that to the dry signal, but you could easily just apply that to just the Verb signal by putting it in the pre location. And we have set the hold modifier to engage the hazy modulation by increasing the modulation mix. So let's go ahead and save that. We'll call it TPR Haze. So the next preset that we're going to do is actually a request from a user. Now, I'll tell you right now, I wasn't able to accomplish this, but I did want to take this one on because I thought it would be interesting to see the limitations of the Mercury X, which might be useful to some people. And also as a challenge, if you know how to accomplish this preset and there's something I missed, go ahead and suggest it in the comments section. Part of the fun of these modular designs is coming up with your own solutions, and there may be solutions that I have not thought of, and others would be interested to know. So this is a preset that I've already dialed in, and I'm going to let you hear it first, and then we'll go ahead and create it from scratch. So this is what I came up with. Okay, so that's what I came up with. Now let's go ahead and start with a fresh preset, and I'll walk you through my creation process. So one of the first things that stood out to me was that he wanted this to be compressed and warm and dirty, which means that we are probably going to want to look at the preamp section. And then choose probably the tube type. And then he wants it gainy. So we'll go ahead and just crank the gain all the way up. We'll turn the Verb down for a minute so we can hear this. I don't hear that, so we'll need to change the location to our dry signal so I do hear that. So a couple things come to mind. One, that's louder than I want it, so we're going to go ahead and reduce the level. And I'll compare that with the dry signal. Okay, so that sounds better level-wise. Now the other thing that strikes me is he said he wanted this compressed and warm. Well, it's already kind of compressed with tube in there. Part of driving tubes is compression. I don't think we need to add a compressor on top of the tube. We could do that in the dynamics section, but I don't think it's necessary, so I'm going to leave that. But the sound isn't particularly warm to me. So I need to find a way to warm that up. So first thing I would think is there any type of EQ in the preamp block? We have a location, we have a gain, we have a level, and we have a type. So there is no EQ here, so I need to get my EQ elsewhere. And the first thing I can think of to do that would be the filter section. So if I choose a ladder filter, then put the location on my drive signal, I can then just control the frequency here on the high end. So that sounds warmer to me, so we'll roll with that. Next thing they wanted was, they wanted chorus. I know there's a chorus in the modulate section. So if we select 79 chorus, and we make sure that this is on our dry signal as well, we should hear a chorus now. So I can hear the compression, which I was talking about earlier, and now we have chorus on top of that. So I run into a limitation here in that I've already used my chorus in the modulation block, which means I cannot use the tremolo modulation in the same block. As we did in the previous preset, I can modify the volume in the preamp block with an LFO to get me trem. So let's go ahead and scroll over to the modifiers section. And we have LFO A. We want to set the assign to the preamp level. So let's go ahead and hear this. That is way slower than I would like. So we'll go ahead and go to the LFO speed and crank that up a bit. So that sounds pretty good. Maybe I want that trem a little shallower, so I'll adjust the minimum up a bit. Okay, that sounds good to me. So the next thing that was requested, this is the part I cannot figure out how to do, and that is set the envelope for the trem speed. Because I would basically need to set the envelope to control the LFO speed, which is a modifier to modifier, and I don't believe that is possible. So we're going to skip that because I don't know how to do that. But the final part of this preset was a 1-second pre-delay. Well, first I'd like to find a reverb that works with this particular preset. So we'll go ahead and turn the mix up. We'll go to our reverb block. And I actually quite like the spring for this. Now, they said a pre-delay of 1 second, and we can do that if we go to our pre-delay block, and then go to the time, and you can set this to be 1 second, approximately. Another thing that you can set the feedback here, so we'll increase that a little bit. And then modulation's fine. Do I want a little damping? Not really. And then I'm going to put a bit of dry blend in here to make it more percussive. I'm going to change the type to Bucket Brigade. And the reason I like this particular one is because I think they call it clock noise, but it sounds like the delay, longer delay settings is aliasing. So you hear when we get longer delay times, it gets grittier, and I really like that. while 1 second of pre-delay is cool on here, what I'd rather do is tie the pre-delay to the tap tempo so that I can then tap in whatever pre-delay that I like. So we'll go ahead and do that. So we want to scroll over to the modifiers section and then go to the hold parameter and set the hold assign to free or tap. And now we should be able to change that with the tap tempo. So I do like that sound, but we've kind of lost some of that warmth with bringing in the reverb mix because the reverb has its own EQ. And you could place the filter block that I used at the end or post location and just filter everything. But we can also just adjust the low and high frequencies in the reverb itself. So we'll take down some of the high frequencies and see how that sounds. I'm also going to increase the low frequencies. So that's considerably warmer. We can even cut out more of the high frequencies. And there you have it. That's how that preset was created. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you later. Hope you have a good day. Bye.